It all began 47 years ago in the Sorbet kingdom where Kuma was born. His parents are filled with joy to have the newest addition to the family. As the father tries to speak to the doctor about Kuma's blood, he replies, "Don't worry. I won't tell anyone." One day, the doctor comes running to the family in a panic. He tries to warn them to escape because there were government agents in the hospital who found out about their buccaneer blood, but the family gets captured into forced labor. From the age of 4, Kuma had to endure severe abuse by celestial dragons. They hurt him and would even threaten to kill him. One day, his father came up to tell him his mother had passed away. As Kuma was crying, he questioned if death was better than this. His father would tell him about the sun god Nika, a folklore that had been passed down through generations of buccaneers. As he is imitating the drums of liberation, he gets shot by a celestial dragon. A few years later, the world nobles held a hunting competition. This tournament took place once every 3 years. They find countries that have no affiliations with the world government and hunt their rulers and civilians like rabbits. They also round them up with their slaves and criminals. The winners get prizes, and this time they chose God Valley. As Kuma tried to escape the island, the other slaves of his group caught him in fear of being killed. They started beating him, dragging his unconscious body back to the hunting grounds. Eventually, as he was being dragged around, he met Emporio Ivankov and Ginny, who had previously heard about him since he was a buccaneer. Before the hunting began, they gave the people an hour to run and hide. The Navy headquarters called on Garp for reinforcement while he was on vacation. Although he wasn't interested in protecting the celestial dragons, he changed his mind because Roger was making his move. Ivankov explains to the others that none of them would survive even after the hunt is over. The total number of survivors of these games is 0. The nobles only lie because giving them hope makes it fun. So Ginny and Ivankov came up with the plan to escape using the powerful devil fruit prizes of the tournament. Ginny used her wiretapping skills to leak information out to the public, hoping they would get decoys to come for the prizes at the center of the island. When Kuma offered to be a decoy, they refused to let him sacrifice himself for the plan. And the plan worked perfectly because the Rock's pirates showed up on the island and were eager to get those prizes. While they took out the marine barricade on the shore, the Roger pirates showed up to join the battle. And so did the Holy Knights and the reinforcements that came with Garp. This was the perfect recipe for chaos, and they used this golden opportunity to go for the prizes just as planned. Right before Ivankov ate the Azure dragon fruit, Big Mom snatched it from her. In the process, Kuma eats his devil fruit as fast as possible. Ivankov says if they manage to get just one survivor, they have won, but Saint Saturn appears.
He tells Kuma history has chosen his fate. His only option is death or slavery. Kuma says it doesn't make sense how they are born into nobility. If he had power, he would use it to help as many people as possible, just like Nika. Saturn says that's why they should vanish. This day would be known as the God Valley Incident. Kuma, Ginny, and Ivankov escaped to the Sorbet kingdom. The world government printed papers, but hid the actual truth of what happened. During the incident, Kuma managed to save over 500 people. Ivankov tells him he has the hands of liberation. Then Ivankov parted ways with the group to make the most out of his freedom. As they say their goodbyes, Kuma tells him he'll never forget his face as long as he lives. And then Ivankov sets out to the sea. To make a living, the two start splitting logs and selling them. As Kuma was walking, 2 boys started bullying him for his size, but Ginny stepped in to beat them up. When Kuma absorbs their pain from the beating, they become a group of friends. One night as they were eating, Ginny noticed she was full for once. That's when she looked at Kuma, and they both started crying tears of relief and happiness. At 17 years old, Kuma was a pastor just like his father, dedicating his Sundays to the elderly population of a nearby village. He used his unique devil fruit abilities, allowing him to take in the chronic pain of others without charging them a single dime. When they asked Kuma to extend the hours and days, Ginny was not happy about it because she knew exactly what that meant. The kingdom was poor, and the ruler King Beckery would throw them in jail where they may starve to death if they couldn't pay the heavenly tribute tax by the celestial dragons. When the elders all left, Kuma would go into the room and take in all of their pain so it doesn't return to their bodies. By his side was Ginny. She was worried because Kuma did this every week, and she would nurture him back to health. 5 years later, Ginny asked Kuma to marry her, but he refused, haunted by fears of repeating a tragic family history about his buccaneer blood. And it was around this time Kuma caught wind of Dragon and the freedom fighters. When Kuma was 25, disaster struck once again. He barged into the royal capital and challenged the army, demanding to get the innocent prisoners back. King Beckery had instilled a new law. He split the Sorbet kingdom into 2 parts, the Northland and Southernland. The South was a lawless land, so they were planning on enslaving the elders who lived there. Kuma was arrested for rebelling against the royal army, and Ginny and his friends were also arrested for trying to free Kuma. His fears had come true. King Beckery was following after the celestial dragons and divided the country into rich versus poor. The royal army was suddenly attacked, and the freedom fighters led by Dragon overthrew the king. Ivankov was with the freedom fighters and came to rescue them. In the process, they recruited Kuma and Guinea. They became known as the Revolutionary Army. Their strategy at the time was to lend support to people who wished to overthrow their rulers. They would enlist people who were willing to fight and teach them how to use weapons. This is when Kuma found out Dragon used to be in the Navy. He says he didn't find any justice there. With the passing years as a revolutionary, Kuma would come back often to check on everyone. 8 years later, Ginny was a captain in the Revolutionary Army forces. She was supposed to meet Kuma's group the next day. Dragon got word that she had been captured by the enemy. This event turned Kuma into a more daring, ruthless soldier. He would completely wear himself out in the battlefield to the point he would have to return by ship. 2 years later, Ginny is now free but gravely ill, finds herself at a crossroads of fate. With her remaining strength, she reaches out to the army. She is dying from a disease contracted at Marineford. In her final moments, she confesses her enduring love for Kuma, even after years of separation. Kuma, learning of Ginny's situation, rushes to the Sorbet kingdom before she could finish her last words. He finds himself at the church they once shared, only to discover Ginny has passed away from her illness. Amidst all the grief, Kuma finds her daughter, whom Ginny had used her life to safely bring to the church. He decides to adopt the baby, vowing to raise and protect her in Ginny's memory. Kuma, now a father, balances his time between learning to raise Bonney and participating in Revolutionary Army missions. This includes fighting and training new recruits. For example, Sabo at some point while growing up trained under Kuma to become the future of the Revolutionary Army. It was also around this time that Kuma noticed that Dragon seems to be familiar with Goa Kingdom. He goes missing every time they are around the area. Kuma proceeds to tell him that he noticed a young boy, but before he finishes, Dragon says he might as well kill him if he continues to talk about this. But over time in Sorbet, Kuma observes worrying signs in Bonney's health. He blocks all sunlight from the church because she starts growing stones that are similar to the ones that killed Ginny. Alarmed, he seeks answers, turning first to the doctors in Sorbet Kingdom. Despite his efforts, the local doctors are unable to diagnose or treat Bonney's condition. Concerned for his daughter's well-being, he goes to Dragon. He makes the difficult decision to resign from the Revolutionary Army to focus entirely on Bonney's health. In response, Dragon vows to aid Kuma. As Kuma dedicates himself to Bonney, their bond deepens. Now Bonney is 5 years old. Following a bullying incident, she threatened to come outside and chase the kids. Kuma immediately stops her even though she is just kidding. When Bonney finds herself insecure about the rocks on her face, Kuma calls them jewels, and they often engage in conversations about the places she dreams of visiting one day, creating a lighthearted atmosphere. Kuma also passed down buccaneer folklore about the sun god Nika. However, the tone shifts when a doctor delivers a devastating update to Kuma. The doctor reveals that Bonney's disease is incurable and she has a maximum of 5 years to live. When Bonney confronts Kuma about her health, she mishears the doctor, thinking she will be all cured once she's 10. He finds himself unable to tell Bonney the truth. Wanting to protect her from the harsh reality, he decides to hide it, agreeing that she will recover when she turns 10, hoping to keep her hopeful and unaware of the severity of her illness. 1 year later, a critical piece of news reached Kuma. The elders informed him that Bikori, the previous king, had returned with a dangerous plan to eliminate the deadweight citizens by burning their homes. Enraged by Bikori's ruthless actions, Kuma took matters into his own hands. He single-handedly charged toward Sorbet's royal palace. In a decisive move, Kuma destroyed the palace, along with Bikori and his forces. This daring act became known as Sorbet's one-man revolution, a landmark event in the island's history. With the tyranny of Bikori ended, the grateful citizens of Sorbet called upon Kuma to lead them as their new king. Kuma accepted this responsibility, but with no personal ambition to rule, he entrusted all political affairs to his advisor, Bulldog, who was Bikori's predecessor. In a turn of events, Bonney reappeared in the church as an adult, stunning Kuma and the onlookers with her sudden transformation. She ate the age-aged devil fruit. While everyone was still processing Bonney's unexpected appearance, Bulldog arrived with his mother. He brought alarming news. Bikori might be plotting a return, supported by a smear campaign against Kuma orchestrated by the world government. Faced with the threat of Bikori's resurgence and the negative propaganda, Kuma made a difficult decision. To protect Sorbet and prevent Bikori's return, he chose to resign as king. Kuma entrusted the care of Bonney and the kingdom to Bulldog, taking to the sea alone and leaving his past behind. As Kuma ventured into the open waters, he was confronted by a marine fleet, commanded by none other than Bikori. Undeterred, Kuma engaged and single-handedly sank the entire fleet. This bold act against the Marines marked a pivotal moment for Kuma. From that day forward, he was labeled a wanted pirate. He traversed the world, from the Torino kingdom to Watheria and the Boyne archipelago, in a relentless quest to find a cure for Bonney's disease. Bounty hunters, attracted by his growing notoriety, constantly pursued him. Years into his journey, Kuma's path led him back to the Revolutionary Army. Aboard their ship, the Wind Grandma, he finds out Dragon would not replace the position once held by Ginny in her honor. In a crucial turn of events, Dragon tipped him off about Dr. Vegapunk, the genius scientist, and his current location post an incident at Punk Hazard. Dragon believed the timing was opportune for Kuma to meet Vegapunk, given the reduced security. With new hope ignited, Kuma prepared to embark on yet another journey, this time to meet Dr. Vegapunk in his relentless pursuit of a cure for Bonney's condition. In a pivotal meeting, Vegapunk confirmed the possibility of treating Bonney's condition with a cutting-edge stem cell treatment, but Vegapunk's interest in Kuma extended beyond the medical. A simple blood test revealed Kuma's extraordinary heritage, sparking the scientist's curiosity and ambition. Dr. Vegapunk, fascinated by the Buccaneer's genes, disclosed his ambitious plan to create clone soldiers. He envisioned using Kuma's unique biological makeup as the foundation for this project. Struck by a desperate need to save Bonney, Kuma agreed to Vegapunk's proposal. In exchange for the treatment, he would provide enough blood samples for Vegapunk to realize his cloning goal. This agreement marked the beginning of the Pacifista project, named after Kuma's self-proclaimed identity as a pacifist. Unknown to Kuma and Vegapunk, their crucial conversation was being monitored by Saint Saturn from the Five Elders. He saw an opportunity, but also a risk. Acting on this eavesdropped information, Saturn dispatched Kizaru to Egghead Island, intending to intervene in the unfolding situation. Saturn imposed 3 conditions before curing Bonney. Kuma must become one of the 7 warlords of the sea, undergo transformation into a cyborg, and have his personality and free will completely erased. Furthermore, Kuma would be prohibited from meeting Bonney after her recovery. She would remain under the world government's supervision until Kuma's transformation was complete. Despite Vegapunk's objections, Kuma consented to these harsh terms, driven by the sole desire to save his daughter. He only requested that Bonney be returned to Sorbet following her surgery. For the next 6 months, Kuma and Bonney shared time at Egghead, with Kuma pretending to be ill and undergoing examinations. It was a bittersweet period, marked by the looming reality of their separation. During this time, he formed unlikely friendships with Sentomaru and Kizaru, even doing the sun god Nika dance, creating a unique bond under the extraordinary circumstances. As Kuma cherishes his final moments with Bonney, he faces the inevitable transformation that awaits him. After the successful completion of Bonney's stem cell treatment, Kuma faced the emotional task of escorting his daughter back to her homeland, a journey marked by both relief and impending separation. Back home, he entrusted Bonney to the care of Queen Connie and Alpha, a CP8 member tasked with ensuring her safety. In a bittersweet farewell, Kuma expressed his gratitude to Bonney, thanking her for her existence and promising to stay connected through letters. Yet, unbeknownst to Bonney, this goodbye carried a deeper, more painful significance. Fulfilling his part of the agreement with the world government, Kuma then assumed the role of a warlord of the sea. This news reverberated throughout the world. He was still known as a tyrant from the smear campaign. But this transition marked the beginning of his transformation, allowing Dr. Vegapunk to commence the cloning and cyborg modifications. It was around this time. In one of Vegapunk's experiments, he asked Kuma to store some of his memories for research purposes. He showed deep reluctance, saying it was too personal, but Vegapunk assured him he'd keep them safe. These memories were then securely stored within the high-security laboratory. Some time passed, and Kuma was now 44 years old. Following his duties as a warlord, he was in Goa Kingdom. He found Luffy training in the forest. Luffy was working on a finishing move, the same one he used on Arlong a year later when he set sail as a pirate. Just as new orders from the world government rang, Kuma discreetly vanished from the island right before Luffy had noticed, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Kuma embarked on a journey across numerous islands. In each place, he penned letters to Bonney, sharing his experiences and observations. Though unbeknownst to him, these letters never reached her. Alpha, the CP8 agent, was intercepting his heartfelt messages before they could reach Bonney, ensuring that she remained unaware of her father's continued affection and efforts to connect with her. The elders also decided it would be beneficial to hide Bonney's powers from the CP8 agents. Back at Egghead, Kuma entered the final stages of his transformation into a cyborg. This intricate process, explained by Dr. Vegapunk and Stussy, would culminate in the loss of his free will within a year. Confronted with the reality of his dwindling autonomy, Kuma decides to take every moment he can to write Bonney a lifetime's worth of letters, pouring his thoughts onto paper. The transformation was methodical. Each part of his body was being modified in turn. His head, the repository of his memories and identity, was deliberately preserved until the end. Even as he underwent this transformation, Kuma balanced his role as a warlord with supporting the Revolutionary Army anytime they needed needed help. His involvement was discreet, avoiding any form of interaction with his former comrades. Back at the church in Sorbet, they found out that Alpha was a government agent spying on them, so they devised a plan to get Bonney to escape and find Kuma. Before they could all set out to the sea, Alpha came running to prevent the escape. That's when Bonney used her powers to imitate Nika and defeat the agent. After that, Kuma appears in the story's timeline in Jaya arc, where he attends a meeting with the warlords about Crocodile's defeat. Later on, he was tasked by the world government to deliver a crucial message to Gecko Moria. He set foot on the ominous island of Thriller Bark. His mission was to inform Moria of Crocodile's replacement and defeat. Upon his arrival, Kuma inquired about Moria's whereabouts. News of Kuma's presence quickly reached Perona. Despite his formidable reputation, she was initially more annoyed than afraid and resolved to confront the warlord herself. In a bold move, Perona challenged Kuma, intent on capturing his shadow. He was unfazed and asked her where she wished to go before making her vanish with a mere touch. The zombies, witnessing Perona's sudden departure, attempted to attack Kuma but were quickly overwhelmed by his imposing presence, retreating in fear. In a brief and unexpected encounter, Kuma questioned Nami about Luffy, specifically asking if he had an older brother. Her answer seemed to satisfy his curiosity. With Nami's response in mind, he teleported away from Thriller Bark, continuing his search for Moria. Kuma eventually located Moria within the Thriller Bark's mansion. In their meeting, Kuma quickly turned to matters of pressing concern. He relayed to Moria the significant news. Blackbeard had been chosen as Crocodile's replacement in the ranks of the 7 warlords. Despite the gap being filled, Kuma expressed a sense of unease about the new arrangement. He then warned Moria about the Straw Hat pirates, likely to be in the vicinity soon. He highlighted the world government's heightened alertness following the Straw Hats' audacious assault on Eni's lobby. The suggestion that the world government feared Moria might be defeated by the Straw Hats ignited Moria's fury. Kuma, perceiving the tension, offered his assistance in dealing with them. In a display of pride and confidence, Moria refused his offer. He insisted that Kuma merely observe as he single-handedly defeated the Straw Hat crew. Despite Moria's boastful claims, the tide of battle turned unexpectedly. Kuma, a silent observer, witnessed the fall of Moria at the hands of Luffy. In the aftermath, he promptly reported Moria's defeat to the world government. Concerned about the potential global repercussions, similar to the uproar following Crocodile's downfall, the government issued a dire order. Fearing the spread of rumors about Moria's defeat, they ordered him to eliminate all witnesses on Thriller Bark, including the Straw Hat pirates. Adhering to the order, Kuma initiated an assault targeting members of the Thriller Bark Victims Association. His attention quickly turned to the formidable Zoro, demonstrating the power of his Devil Fruit ability. The conflict escalated as Frankie and Sanji engaged, both suffering injuries in their attempts to hit Kuma. Acknowledging the Straw Hats' recent battle with Moria, he considered the situation and then presented them with a chilling ultimatum. Surrender Luffy to him and the rest would be spared. Unwilling to betray their captain, the Straw Hats refused Kuma's offer. In response, he unleashed a devastating bomb, creating an air shockwave that engulfed a significant portion of the island. The aftermath of his actions left Thriller Bark engulfed in chaos and destruction, a testament to the power he wielded and the dire nature of the orders he followed. Though his bomb didn't take their lives, it rendered the Straw Hat crew unconscious. In this vulnerable state, Kuma moved to capture the defenseless Luffy. In a daring and desperate move, Zoro, mustering his remaining strength, struck Kuma with a sword attack. Though powerful, only managed to do minor damage. The wound revealed a startling truth. Kuma revealed to Zoro that he is an incomplete human weapon crafted by the world government and Dr. Vegapunk, meaning at this point he still has consciousness. In a moment of selfless bravery, Zoro offered his life in exchange for Luffy's. As Sanji stepped forward to sacrifice himself, Zoro swiftly knocked him out, determined to be the one to make the ultimate sacrifice. Kuma, acknowledging Zoro's offer, agreed under the condition that he endure the immense pain Luffy had suffered in his fight against Moria. In a harrowing moment, Kuma extracted and transferred Luffy's pain to Zoro, nearly costing him his life. As Kuma teleported away, he reflected on Luffy being Dragon's Kid, recognizing the strength of his spirit and the loyalty of his crew. Kuma set off for Mary Joy's, the seat of the world government, to deliver his report on the details of his encounter to Fleet Admiral Sengoku and Garp. Sengoku scolded him for his failure to carry out the order to eliminate the Straw Hats. Following a grueling confrontation with a Pacifista on the Sabaody archipelago, the Straw Hat pirates found themselves at a crossroads. Their victory, however, was short-lived, as they were swiftly confronted by Kizaru, Sentomaru, and another Pacifista, PX-1. The tense standoff took an unexpected turn with the arrival of the real Bartholomew Kuma. Zoro, recognizing him, he expressed his surprise at being alive, attributing it to Kuma's earlier act of mercy. He was seemingly impressed by Zoro's resilience, used his devil fruit ability to make Zoro vanish, transporting him to the same distant location as Perona. An outraged Sanji prepared to battle him, while the Straw Hats faced off against the relentless attacks of PX-1. Kuma, in a surprising move, used his ability to dispatch PX-1, causing Sentomaru's anger to flare. Sanji, urging Usopp to flee, launched an attack, only to be hurt in the process. Usopp's attempt to hold Kuma back was in vain, as he too was sent flying. Sanji charged at Kuma, but he too was swiftly sent away. During the altercation, he approached Rayleigh, whispering a revelation. He was an officer of the Revolutionary Army, intent on aiding Luffy and his crew. As Kizaru inquired about Kuma's whisper to Rayleigh, he ignored him, refusing to satisfy Kizaru's curiosity. In a desperate bid to protect his crew, Luffy activated Gear 2. Frankie, with a fierce strong right, attacked him but to no avail. Luffy, fueled by rage, launched a jet pistol, which Kuma effortlessly blocked with his paws. With only Robin and a transformed Chopper remaining, a desperate Luffy lunged at Kuma, pleading for him to cease sending his friends away. Unmoved by Luffy's pleas, he moved on to Robin and Chopper. In swift motions, both Chopper and Robin were sent flying. Luffy cried out in despair, powerless to save his friends. Kuma, with a final statement that he would not see Luffy again, sent him flying, completing the disbandment of the Straw Hat crew. Prior to his return to Marineford, Kuma sought a private conversation with Rayleigh. He conveyed a message as he alluded to the limited time he had left before the completion of his transformation into a full Pacifista. This act marked the last known action taken by Kuma as a free agent. During Marineford, he was standing alongside fellow warlords to fight in the war. As he awaited the arrival of the Whitebeard pirates, the tide of battle shifted when Little Oars Jr. charged in, causing destruction. Kuma retaliated with his Ursus Shock, a devastating attack that severely wounded Little Oars Jr. and swept aside both Marines and pirates. Kuma, now an offensive force, launched a beam attack at Ivankov, igniting his fury, at the same time shocked that Kuma had forgot about him. In a chilling revelation, Doflamingo explained to a shocked Ivankov and Luffy that the Kuma before them was no longer the man they knew. Vegapunk's modifications had transformed him into PX-0, a pacifista devoid of his past personality and memories. He then continues to fight Ivankov, preventing them from saving Ace. Ivankov responded with his galaxy wink and a powerful kick, vowing to protect his followers from Kuma's relentless attacks. After the war, Kuma once again made a mysterious appearance at the Sabaudi archipelago. Clutching his trademark Bible, Shaki recognized him as an ally. The reason behind Kuma's unexpected guardianship of the ship was gradually unveiled. Prior to the loss of his personality, Vegapunk had programmed a special mission into Kuma's body to protect the Thousand Sunny at all costs until the return of a Straw Hat crew member. During the Levelly arc, Sabo broke in to look for Kuma, along with some of the other Revolutionary Army officers. Bonney also disguised herself as the queen of the Sorbet kingdom to infiltrate the castle. They found out Kuma was reduced to a slave to rent at Mary Jawaz. This cruel fate was a direct consequence of his earlier actions in helping Luffy. Prior to the Levelly meeting, he was rented by Rosward, a member of the Celestial Dragons, signifying a disturbing misuse of power. When Sabo saw this, he was angry enough to almost blow his cover and attack the palace. The revolutionary members had to calm him down before ruining the mission. Bonney also witnessed the atrocities her father was going through. On the climactic fourth day of the Levelly, Sabo and his fellow revolutionaries launched their attack. Their mission is to rescue Kuma from his dire predicament. This led to an intense confrontation with Admiral Fujitora and Green Bull. The revolutionaries had the advantage due to the admirals not being able to go all out because of the Celestial Dragons. Meanwhile, Sabo went on a stealth mission to locate the keys necessary to free Kuma. The operation was a success. Sabo and his team managed to escape with Kuma. Upon reaching Momoiro Island, Kuma was greeted by Dragon. When asked about his observations in Mary Jawaz, Kuma, in a rare display of compliance, addressed Dragon as Master and shared his insights. In a startling turn of events, while the revolutionaries were busy repairing him, he abruptly rose and began a seemingly aimless run, stumbling along and ignoring the calls of his concerned allies. As Ivankov and Dragon are asking where is he off to, he disappears. Using his devil fruit powers, he flew until he crashed on the red line. Then he proceeded to climb all the way up to Mary Jawaz. The Marines were alerted to his presence and were dispatched to apprehend him, as panic-stricken citizens evacuated the area. The guards tried their best to apprehend him, but it proved to be too much of a task. They noticed Kuma was in a hurry trying to go somewhere. He rose again and attacked them with the Urus Shock. Fleet Admiral Akainu appeared in front of him and demanded answers to Kuma's motives and intended destination. Along with orders from the world nobles, he ultimately decided it would be best to kill him. As Kuma tried to leave to get to his original destination, Akenu attacked and melted a small part of his head. In the process, he noticed Kuma still had blood pumping in his veins. Then Kuma uses his powers to escape, leaving the admiral, remembering telling Bonney her dad's consciousness will never return. He wonders where a man with no free will or consciousness could possibly be going. Jumping back to Egghead, Bonney is angry at Vegapunk for turning Kuma into a mindless cyborg and essentially killing him. When she asked for the reason, he wouldn't answer because of the promise he made with Kuma about never revealing the truth to Bonney. All he could say was Kuma made the choice himself, but can't tell her why. Bonney, unsatisfied with the answer, starts throwing Vegapunk around the lab, but then she notices a room with a paw logo. He tries to stop her from going in there, but fails. When Bonney opens the door, she sees Kuma's powers. Vegapunk tries to lie and tell her that's a ball of pain Kuma extracted, but she knows her father well enough to realize this was his memories.